Hello.
Hello.
I'm calling because of your car's extended warranty.
Oh, thank God. I don't have a car.
Literally how it goes, I feel like for me all the time. Back when I lived in San Francisco, I'd be like, I don't own a car. And they're like, are you sure? No, bye.
My favorite, I just tweeted about this last night. I've been mourning the fact that I no longer have my car because I fucking loved my car. And then gas prices went up to like $7,000 a gallon. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of happy to have my car anymore.
I mean, it is convenient, but I'm hoping that like this inspires people to understand why other sources of energy are super important.
And also like understand
from an economic standpoint.
I need people to understand the president doesn't determine what the like gas price is. I don't care if you yelled at Trump or Obama or Biden or whoever.
Doesn't matter.
The president has nothing to do with it. It's the oil industry. And also, let's put this out there. Gas is a necessity tool for a lot of people to get to work and move around and all that kind of stuff, right? So for a lot of people, this is really, really hurting their wallets. This is not something that's great for them. Let's now turn that attention to fucking all of these different industries that do this in other capacities that are way worse. Like, I don't know, insulin or any like of the health industry that like overprices and gouges because they are so like they're able to run rampant. But anyway, welcome to my soapbox.
No, but that was side note, when I was going to school for public health, that was one of the most fascinating things that I learned is why the United States healthcare system is such a mess in terms of our prescription drug costs. Highly recommend someone do research into this if this is something you're interested in, because like a lot of people say, why don't you just live somewhere else? But there's a lot more layers to why our prices are so much higher than other countries. And there's a lot of loopholes. And there's a lot of like,
it's
there's
great
a lot of
at the end of the day.
Shit. There's a lot of crazy shit. But basically, TLDR, if the US prices were to ever lower, other countries would have to raise. And newsflash, it's never going to happen. So we're basically complaining about something that's never going to change until our entire healthcare system changes.
Exactly. It's one of the things I always laughed about. I worked at a pharmacy school and people would be like, well, you know, the United States has the best health system in the world. And I went, let's dissect that. What do you mean by that? The fact that you can have a fucking flu and be hospitalized for a day and go bankrupt? Like, what the fuck? Like, no. Like, we don't have a great health system. What we have are great healthcare workers. That's what we have.
Speaking of health, which is a big part of these two episodes today. Welcome everyone to Hot Mess Moments.
Our podcast was named after the healthcare system.
It's also
true. So hot, such a mess, such a moment.
I still hate it. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Zaner, also known as 8-Bit Dylan Online. Lost is my favorite show, but I've never seen The Nanny.
And I'm Beth Dixon, also known as Augusta Wind 11 Online. And The Nanny is my all-time favorite show, but I've never seen Lost. Today, we are bringing you 2 episodes of season 3, episodes 3 and 4 of The Nanny. And I'm very excited because I just feel like, you know, these 2 episodes, they're not like the most like outrageously laugh out loud kind of stuff, but funny. It's just like it's great entertainment on a Saturday, like what we're doing today, just to kind of sit back for an hour and watch 2 silly episodes of a show.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk more about how I'm noticing how they are structuring their season 3 episodes compared to seasons 1 and 2, because they're vastly different.
Very different.
And like how the structure of the beginning, middle, and end to all these episodes are. Before we get into that, how you doing? We had a week off.
We did. We had a week off. So thank you for, waiting for our next podcast to come out. We're apologizing that we took a week off, but we just honestly, we had a lot going on in our lives. I had a whole bachelorette party weekend for my little cousin I had to go to, which was a blast.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I had so much fun. We went to Boston and we had this Airbnb. So she had her Four bridesmaids there. Five bridesmaids, and then my sister-in-law and myself as her cousins. So they went to a club. I did not participate in that because we're still in a pandemic, so I'm not going. But we had a friggin' blast. And then the next day they were all hungover. We went on this brunch cruise around Boston Harbor for 2 hours. And I was throwing them back because I was like, yeah, after the brunch cruise, we're just going back and relaxing. Except for that's not what the plan was. So I step off the boat drunk, not understanding that we are now going to go walk around Boston for like 3 hours.
Oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare.
So I'm sitting there in the middle of Boston Commons being like, oh, this isn't good. There's children playing and I'm drunk. We're going to go see the oldest street in Boston, which is Acorn Street, still cobblestones. And I'm like, I can't walk. And you want me to be on cobblestones right now? It was just like a whole thing. But we had a great time. That
sounds actually fucking awful. I think the only thing that would be worse than that if it was like muggy and hot out. Because then it's like,
God it was not.
Because then you can like bundle up, and so instead of just feeling miserable, you just feel sleepy, and you're like, I just want to go.
This was like a perfect temperature for me because it was like 45, 50 degrees, which for anybody knows that's a comfortable like degree where I can just barely wear a jacket and I'm good to go. So it was kind of perfect walking weather because you'd get those little breezes that came through and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's nice. But every once in a while I'd just be sitting there like, oh man, I'm getting sober and I want to not be standing and walking right now, especially in the boots that I wore that were not planned for walking 3 miles.
Oh no.
So we all got back. All of our feet were bothering us, but it was fun. It was a great little, walk around Boston. And then we had a PJ party that night. And
that's nice.
We watched 8 episodes in a row of Jersey Shore Family Reunion.
I love that.
Which inspired my sister-in-law, who's never seen Jersey Shore. So she watched the family reunion. She's like, I kind of want to go back and watch the original now. And I was like, I've got you. So yesterday we spent a few hours and watched the first 3 episodes. And she's coming back in a couple days. And we're going to keep watching it throughout the workday when I don't have meetings. So excited.
That sounds great.
Amazing.
Jersey Shore is one of those shows. I know we talked about it a lot on this podcast, but I think it ages well because it's such a good time capsule of like late 2000s club scene,
early 2010s
MTV culture. Yeah. That's what I meant. Early 2010s. And it's like fascinating how well it captures like what that era was like in terms of the fashions, in terms of like the New York scene. It's just like
New Jersey.
That's what I'm saying. New Jersey scene.
I need to fucking give you a lesson all the time. You're like, oh,
they're the same.
No, they're not.
They're basically the same. Yeah, they're like,
you want to piss off someone from New York? Tell them they're New Jersey.
I was like, you're giving me New Jersey vibes.
You want to compliment someone from New Jersey? You say that they're New York.
Damn. Oh my gosh.
I say that just because I live in New York City now and I have to.
No, it's super great. And it's honestly such a great show. It's so silly. It's so stupid. You can clearly tell that it's scripted, but that makes it even better.
Well, the other thing that's great about it too is that the things that were awful back then about like how they were all acting, it's not like we glorified it as like, oh, this is something like we all collectively came together and said, wow, this is a whole bunch of bags of trash right here. Like,
yes, and we love it.
I'm watching the first 3 episodes and like Ronnie's having a full conversation. I've totally forgot that in the very beginning of the first season when they're just meeting, Mike and Sam were almost a thing.
Yes, I do remember that.
And so, but they're in a car, like Mike and and Ronnie. And Ronnie's like, I'd pound her out. And he's talking about all the girls. Oh, yeah. I mean, I pound her out, but that doesn't make her wife material. And I'm just like, oh my God, you guys sound like the 2022 men with fucking podcasts. Now, what the hell? But the great thing is like none of us watched that and we're like, oh, what an honorable person. Like we watched it knowing full well that these were awful fucking people.
What a garbage human.
I mean, Ronnie has just continued to plummet in any kind of stock he did have.
That's true.
But the thing I will say that's also kind of interesting about Jersey Shore is that those individuals, at the end of the day, they do have like moments where you're like, why isn't everyone like that? Where she's like, you know what? I'm happy that you apologize because it shows a lot of character and it takes ownership of the things that you did wrong. And you know what? I honestly, like, I have more respect for you and I want to get to know you a little bit better. And I'm like, where's that energy? Like, that's fine. What if you guys were only like that? Like JWoww at one point's like, they're all laughing, trying to do Grace. Like, you don't make fun of Grace. Like Grace, like I was just sitting back and I'm like, JWoww, you were cheating on your boyfriend, like upside down at a club, and you're upset that somebody is like laughing during Grace before dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so
like
good.
Someone literally took a shot out of your pussy and
you turned upside down and let Pauly D eat you out at the club. Like, I don't know what is happening. Like,
you do not take the higher road here. No, I think it's great. I tried rewatching, I think, the first episode, and I was like, this is bringing me back. But I've also started rewatching Flavor of Love again, and talk about a show that does not age well.
Yeah,
Flavor of Love. It's funny because I usually do like a yearly rewatch of at least the first season, sometimes the second season, and it's every time I forget how terrible every human in that show is. And until I rewatch it and I'm like, oh shit, that was like really transphobic, or oh shit, that's hella homophobic. But you know what? Still love it.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, of course, we are people with the privilege to not be trans, for example. But even in the things like that are so like misogynistic or homophobic or whatever,
I'm like, yes, queen, problematic fave.
Look at how many people still stand Tiffany Pollard, and not even like a year ago, she's making incredibly transphobic remarks and then backing them up. And then people are like, you know what? I want her on Celebrity Big Brother. I'm like, fuck off. I don't want her to have a platform. Yeah. But the thing is like, you can go back and understand like this kind of shit is fucking wrong and it's awful and call it out in the moment. And then also understand the greater picture of like, these aren't redeemable people. Like the whole point of this show is not that, oh, wow, look at how great and classy everybody is. It's like, no, these are hateful,
to be made fun of,
horrible, trashy people. The whole point that they're on television is that we can go, you know what? I feel better about myself at the end of the day.
Because I mean, I think that's like the point of reality television anyway, is to make yourself feel better about not being these people that are on screen. And typically in order to do that, you kind of have to find garbage humans in order to make that a reality.
I wish if you look up reality TV in Webster's dictionary,
it says people that you really don't want to be. Not all reality shows are like this. No, I think that there's some that have hit a good middle ground, like The Circle, where it's like it humanizes a lot of the contestants that are on the show while also still bringing drama. And it's less about like they are garbage. It's not like that.
It depends on what you're going for, right? There are shows that clearly are casting people to be awful and to show you like the very like polar ends of like what you could be as a human, right? Like it's a shock value kind of thing. Those are your Jersey Shores, your Flavor of Love, that kind of blah, blah, blah. Those are like people who are taking it to the nth degree. Then you have people, even if they are still casting with certain stereotypes in mind, like your Survivors and that kind of thing, who have genuine human moments that are humanizing and like, wow, I never saw this person in this life, or this kind of representation opens eyes and doors that hadn't been opened before, or on a mass scale, or might introduce some of the, like you take someone like Evie from last season of Survivor, and there's so many people who didn't know what a non-binary person was, right? And now they see a person who, while shooting the show, went by she, her, and was cis and that kind of thing. And that was like a trans non-binary individual who goes by mostly they, them, but also does she, her. And it's just, you have that representation of someone sitting there on television saying, if you're a queer kid, like you can do whatever you want and I love you. And if you didn't have someone who tells you I love you, I love you. Like that's powerful. Even if you are not the queer kid at home, if you are a parent who's struggling with the fact that your kid might be queer, you see that representation and it adds the sense of my child can have a normal life or be anything they want to be. And this stigma isn't something that is as bad as it used to be, kind of thing.
Honestly, Snooki and Flava Flav did in fact throw the first brick at Stonewall. And I think we need to finally recognize it.
Oh no, not once again taking that away from a trans Black woman.
I know, right?
I know. And every time somebody says that, I'm like, oh God, I hope at the end, which I know that you know that, but it's just like
clearly.
Back, I'm like, I'm gonna need people to learn a lot about Stonewall.
Oh, I think
Eric Berry.
I just think queer people in general just need to learn history. I'm this is speaking of someone who does not know a lot about our history. Yeah. Like I think like we need to like learn more, educate ourselves. Like it's
also sucks that we have to go out of our way to do that.
Yes.
Because it's not taught in schools. Queer history is American history. Black history is American history. Women's history is American history. Like all of this.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I just wanted to see your reaction.
I just found out that in the time that I was alive, so in 1992, I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
Women could finally file for divorce and get property back.
Welcome to America, baby.
Is that not fucked up?
Oh, yeah. It's horrifically fucked up.
I was 4. I am 33. Or it was one of those things. It was something about filing for divorce or property. It was incredible.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, never mind. It was something else. I was looking up a different thing. Never mind. Anyway, I want to get into these episodes because we got some fun stuff to talk about.
Speaking of strong women in 1992, although at this point it's 1996, but whatever.
They're the same diff. They're basically a block apart. No, I'm just kidding. Let's get into these episodes. We've got The Nanny, season 2, episodes 3 and The Nanny, season 3, episodes 3 and 4, The Dope Diamond, and A Franny Family Feud?
No, A Fine Family Feud.
A Fine Family Feud.
She had style, she was there. That's how she became the nanny.
Okay, let's get into this, shall we?
Okay, let's do it. Are we going to do our Minnesota accents the entire time?
Absolutely not.
Actually,
absolutely not.
Do you notice I didn't even do a Minnesota accent? I purely did a North Country accent there the entire time.
I'm going to act like I know the difference.
There is, okay, yeah, not a lot of people would know this, but in Northern New York, you have a Canadian, like New England, and like Minnesota, like Wisconsin accents combined together. There was this commercial for a car dealership that was like, they were famous for, you don't have to have any credit. You can come in and get a car approved, right? But their spokesperson talked like this the entire time. And so they'd sit there, their name was Time Buyer, and they would have their, it was this woman who's like, come on down to Time Buyer. You don't need to have credit. And this shit is so
you don't
insane.
Need it. Just
Time Buyer. And then at the very end, this is their jingle. Ready? Time Buyer.
I love that.
Come on down to Time Buyer. Time Buyer.
I love that. The reason why I was laughing earlier is because I had a conversation with my husband, and we listened to obviously my boss's podcast, Mary Kish's podcast, Fire Escape, and one of the co-hosts is from Syracuse. And Nigel was like, you can tell when someone's from Syracuse is when they always talk about the fact that they fucking live in Syracuse and like upper New York. And we thought back and I was like, I don't think there is a single episode of this podcast that we have not talked about upstate New York.
Telling
And
you.
I was like,
You know why?
If you don't
It's
know,
because
that's
everybody sits the back and says New York. Oh, it's New York City. No, there's a whole fucking state here. And we get put in the shadows. And every time there's any kind of fucking list of like the best food in every state, guess where it's coming from? Fucking New York City. And I'll tell you this much, okay? I've lived in New York City. Yes, there's some pretty damn good food here. You know where there's also really good food? The rest of the fucking state. Buffalo wings were made in Buffalo, New York, people. Utica greens. They're actually not that good. I don't think them. Chicken
all I'm
riggies.
saying is you are not
Garbage
alone in this, Beth, because Mike Mahardy brings up
Thousand Islands dressing. I'm just going to bring it up. Also, I do appreciate that you have clearly learned how to say Syracuse because you're listening to him say Syracuse. Yeah. And I know I've brought this up before, but people from Syracuse say Syracuse. Everybody else in the world says Syracuse. So
Syracuse, New York.
Syracuse.
Speaking of New York, though, this is a very New Yorky set of episodes, especially in regards to Queens in the second episode, where we get that class divide.
You are also, this is something I feel like, and obviously we have a lot of Sylvia and, the Fine family in these couple of episodes. You are about to get even more of a Jewish New York City feel. Everything. I felt like every line that Fran said in both episodes had something to do with being Jewish in New York City at some point. We're making Jewish? A reference. No, and making a reference to like Hadassah or like saying words like, oh, did this actually accidentally puncture your tuchus? Like
your tuchus.
Like there's so much Yiddish that's thrown around. And I feel like, yes, that was in the first couple of seasons, but they're really starting to lean into like the caricature of a Jewish woman from New York City, specifically Queens.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed these episodes, but let's get into the first one.
Yeah. The dope diamond.
No, I just fingered my glasses. I've been trying to clean these because they're like so foggy and I don't have a cloth.
Did you just say you just fingered your glasses?
I fingered them.
Does that mean the lens popped out and you fingered it?
I just put my finger on it because I'm a dirty little boy.
Okay.
I have an update about that. I should have mentioned this in the beginning. I'm probably gonna have to wear glasses for most of our episodes going forward because I went to an eye doctor. Found out, got astigmatism. Love that for me. But also, weird thing. I have apparently larger than normal nerve endings in my eyes.
Oh.
The nerve center of my eye. And so the doctor was like, hey, this doesn't mean that you have glaucoma, but it's something that we need to monitor because if it grows any larger over a year, that means that we got to really monitor this. But if you were just born with larger than normal nerve endings, then that's just that. So we get to find out in a year. I love that for me.
Is it because your nerve endings affect the pressure of your eye? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes. It has.
That's what glaucoma does.
Yes. It has a bit to do with that. And then it also is, if it's continually growing, that means that there is pressure that is causing it to grow. But if it's just larger, that's means
what the air puff test is. When I used to work in an optometrist's office, that was my favorite thing. I'd go, look at the balloon. Nothing's gonna happen. Do your other eye now.
She's like, come on, you little piece of shit.
My favorite is when I had to do it to my brother, and I was like, come on, get your head in there. And I'm like yelling at him the whole time.
In terms of this episode, the Dope Diamond,
I would give rating.
I would give this a rating of probably a 6 out of 10.
I think that's solid.
I thought it was a good episode. I thought it was really funny. I think I am just not a fan of, and I'll talk about this now, the structure of season 3 episodes compared to other seasons. It's not bad. I just don't like when the beginning doesn't have a connection to the end because it's like, how I feel and this could be wrong, how I feel that these episodes are structured thus far in season 3 is they have the middle and the ending figured out. And they're like, how do we get there? They're like, let's figure out like some extravagant beginning to reel viewers in, and then we'll dump it right away. So we kind of got that. The title of this episode is The Dope Diamond, which plays like a very small portion of what this actual episode is meant to be about, which is about the relationship between Fran, her mother, and her grandmother. And for me, the end of the episode was leaps and bounds better and funnier than the beginning of the episode, which wasn't bad.
No.
But I wish if what they were trying to go for was therapy and like this funny dialogue between the family, give us more of that. If that is like your end goal of this episode, I want more of that. I want less of this weird guy who is like con artisting Fran to get her to like to steal this diamond. I could give a rat's ass about that guy. They literally could have never shown the guy and it would have been the same episode.
I think that I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because one of the things I've never liked about this episode is that it feels like two very short episodes put together.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have the first episode, which is really about Maxwell being jealous of Fran and Fran being like so wanting to get married, and that's it. Right. And then it doesn't work out and there's a fraud, and oh my gosh, Maxwell's right in some capacity. And Fran's embarrassed and all that kind of stuff. Then the second episode is the whole relationship between why Fran wants to get married and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Which I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always had an issue that like it just kind of like what you said, it feels like they have scenes of what they want to happen, but they don't know how to put it all together, if that makes sense. What I like about this though is that they're feeding you a whole bunch of things, but it's like they're feeding you too much of a whole bunch of different things. So it's like, we're going to throw in your face this whole Fran and Max are like oblivious to how much they like each other, but clearly like each other kind of thing. Right. That's the whole point. And that's how the episode ends is like, oh, we're stuck on each other. Like that kind of thing. Right. With like the whole thing that they're going to continuously do of like, oh, if I could find a woman who does that, if I could find a man who does that, like that kind of thing. Right. And they're just describing the other person. But I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think that when you have two episodes that are clearly being melded into one because they didn't have enough to flesh either one of them out, and they're like, how can we make them related? Like, it makes it feel just a little discombobulated.
I agree. I think we also had this issue with like, was it episode 2 was the same way, where it was like the pacing was weird. Like the beginning didn't match what the ending was. I couldn't remember which episode it was in season. I think it was episode 2 with the date.
The first episode was the pen pal.
And the second one's so it was the pen pal one, because the pen pal, I can't remember.
The pen pal one was a great structured wise one.
Yeah. Then it must be the second one that I'm thinking of.
Episode. Yeah.
But it's not like they're terrible episodes.
No.
It's just, it
was Franny and the Professor. It was when she was on
yes.
Jeopardy, and how we felt like the Jeopardy was its own thing. And
definitely that. And so for this, I felt like if you're going to give me the first half of the episode, really just dive in and make that the point of this episode and like flesh that out a bit more. Same with like, if you're going to give us like this really great story arc of like the mom, the daughter, they're talking about these issues that they have. Make that the focal point of this episode and really give us like a full 20 minutes of that, because that was really funny. And I thought it was really well done. I love that we got some great Gracie scenes in this. For once, like Gracie actually shows up and actually impacts the plot in some way. I loved the little side pieces of Brighton with his father, with this chess game. I thought that was really well done. And even the interactions between Cece and Niles were great in this episode. I think overall, the reason it's a 6 is because the foundation of the episode kind of brought it down for me. I'm like, get this all great. Like you said, it's a bunch of great parts. They're just kind of shoving pieces into the puzzle that don't really match.
They're like, here's a sundae bar, and here's every topping imaginable. And we're going to throw every single one of them in uneven amounts on top of your sundae.
That's fully what it felt like. It's like, I will eat all of these toppings individually. They all are delicious. We don't need them all in one episode. And I think this is the first, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I think this is the first time in a Nanny episode in all of these seasons that I felt like every single piece of it was really, really good. And it still came out. It still came out kind of meh to me. I was laughing throughout.
I think that I'm going to be honest with you. And I think when you are an adult who's podcasting about the show and you have to think about it in this way, like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. When I've grown up watching these episodes, this has never bothered me. And now that we're sitting here and kind of dissecting it a little bit, I'm like, yeah, you know what? What the fuck, The Nanny, right?
Yeah, it's not like awful. It's just
no, it's still very entertaining.
Which is funny because when I'll review episode 4, I thought episode 4 was great. I loved the structure. It did not follow the same beginning, middle, and end. It had like a solid plot and a solid direction and a solid like way that they're going to go.
I'm looking at the next. So here's the thing. This isn't going to be the last time they do something like this. They're like, it's not even that they're trying to do two different stories. It's they're trying to play with the structure, which is we don't want you to know where the episode ends. Whereas before
they want you to keep watching throughout.
Right. Whereas I actually felt like what season 1 and season 2 suffer from is that they're so predictable. Of like, this is how it's
fully.
But I do think that what they're trying to do is play with the structure to say like, hey, we have two really funny ideas. Here's how we marry them so that you wouldn't think this is where it's going to lead. Right. So you think like it's almost like half the time of these episodes coming up, whatever the tension, the problem is in the first 5 minutes of the episode will be solved by minute 15. And then for the last 10 minutes or so of the episode, you're going to have a resulting conflict from that being resolved or moved onwards, right? Or something springs up instead. And sometimes it works really well. I can think of examples in my head where I'm like, I can't wait for you to see this episode because it does it perfectly. Versus an episode like this where, like we're saying, it's like too many toppings for the sundae, but they don't necessarily make the sundae delicious. It just makes every individual piece delicious. When I look at the next 2 episodes, which I won't get into right now, neither one of them are structured like that. They're more structured like a Fine Family Feud or Pen Pals. So both of next week will be like that. But there's definitely episodes coming up in season 3, 4, 5, 6 that are like,
and I could see how this would work. Like, I think from like, as someone that has like written scripted content before, I understand why you would prefer this approach to the other approach that we've gotten in seasons 1 and 2, because with this approach, in at least the format of it, it's you're going to follow along a lot better in something like this because you're always getting something new every 10 minutes. As opposed to those other episodes. And I think this works for them because they've honed in on the comedy. They know it works. They know the funny. They constantly are giving you funny. The entire cast is comfortable in their funniness now. Right. So yeah, I think overall 6 out of 10. And in terms of this plot, I love the fact that even though Maxwell's a piece of shit, he knows for a fact, he's like, girl, you've met this guy for 2 weeks and he's the perfect catch. You know something's up here. Like, come on now. And it's funny to me because I felt like in the first 2 seasons, these roles would have been reversed. Mm-hmm. I felt like Maxwell was very naive and would have fallen for something like this. So, and I think he has, like with that actor, that like kid actor episode.
He falls for it professionally all the time.
All the time. And usually Fran has the street smarts to know when something like this is up. Yeah. So it was very interesting to me to see the flip of it where she falls for a con artist and Maxwell's like sees the painting on the wall and is like, is that the term, painting on the wall?
The paint on the wall.
paint on the wall. He sees the framed painting on the wall.
He sees the Monet on the wall. He sees
Yeah.
the original Beth Dixon on the wall.
Yes. And he he doesn't want to he doesn't interact with the issue, doesn't try to stop it, but he's just like, girl, I see that there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great from a writer's perspective because it allows us to see Maxwell be jealous. We love when Maxwell's jealous. I think it's very entertaining to see him squirm. And I love it because it gives Niles something to hold over Maxwell, which is always fun.
I'm actually happy you brought that up because that's something I wanted to get your perspective on of what's related to what you're saying. You know, they're clearly writing Fran a little dumber. They're in a lot of ways. They're writing Maxwell a little, he's not as stuffy, but he is but he's stuffy in different ways now, or he's like stubborn in different ways than he hadn't been. Niles is more relaxed and looser as a character. He's not like the perfect butler at all times. You know, Cece has a lot more physical comedy with her facial expressions and things that she's doing with props and doors shutting and like that kind of stuff. I think all of this, and I would love your opinion, is like, how do they keep these characters interesting but make them grow a little bit, but also we're still learning new things? Do you think that makes sense for them to do at this point in the series? Or
I think, okay, so I'm going to refer to a sitcom that was on television, in my opinion, for too many seasons, but was super successful, Modern Family. So my husband we have been kind of watching episodes here and there. And I think if there's one thing I'm going to give Modern Family credit for, it's that all the characters are the same type of funny pretty much for the majority of the show. Yep. They have the same jokes. They fall in the same sense of humor, the same kind of plot lines where everyone's kind of lying to each other. And then eventually there's a resolution by the end of the episode. I feel like The Nanny is the same way, where it's now that everyone has their comedy chops, they are going to keep doing the same kind of comedy where you're going to see the development is in the actual storyline of the episodes, which is why when I predicted it, I was like, I feel like a baby's on the horizon, or I feel like they're going to get married in the future, because you have to keep things fresh and interesting for the season to reel people back in.
Do you think if they got together, that would ruin the series?
No, I feel like if they don't get together, people will get bored, and people, that's why I think shows like Modern Family did really well, is because the actors were aging with the show. And so as Luke gets older, there's storyline for there. When the gay couple's daughter, Lily, I think is her name, when she gets older, you see the gay couple struggle with, how do I raise a daughter that is getting angsty and rebellious? So but the comedy is pretty much the same for Lily's character throughout all of the show. It's just her storyline is different. And
I think that is something, first of all, that makes a lot of sense. The kids play such a larger role in Modern Family than they do in this one. And I think that's why you have to find these different layers that make sense. You can't have the same Maxwell's so naive about his house and that's it. Clearly, if there's a chemistry between him and Fran, they really do need to have these moments where where does Niles have power over Maxwell? Where does Maxwell have power over Cece? Where does Cece have power over Fran? Those interrelationships are super important. And that's always something that has a flux to it in any given situation. But, when you look at a sitcom that's similar to the structure and style, look at Will and Grace. Will and Grace is the same thing as The Nanny. Seinfeld is the same thing as The Nanny. All of these shows, it's the same jokes, it's the same physicality, it's the same kind of stuff, but you just don't know what the joke will be, right? And Will and Grace, I'm talking about the original Will and Grace, not the reboot.
Yeah, because I think the reboot, that's another conversation, but
when you think about, the late 90s, early 2000s Will and Grace, how they attempted to change up things was going, let's introduce this relationship for this character and see how everyone reacts. That's what they're doing with the nanny. Let's see how everyone reacts when she's engaged to a guy for 2 weeks. What happens? What happens when you add Yetta and Sylvia to a therapy situation? Let's see how everyone reacts. But how they're going to react. You know what I mean?
But that's like sitcom 101 though.
Exactly.
That's how you make a good show is you make really good characters and you just throw them into random situations and see how those actors play out that scene. And
it's why the chatterbox would never work.
Yes, because you can't
none of those characters were good.
That's the thing is like with a show, if you're trying to do a spinoff, you have to have, and this is why I hate that I'm saying this. I've never seen the show, but from everything that I've heard, that is why Young Sheldon works as a spinoff of Big Bang Theory, is because it grounds its characters and it's emotional. And like anyone that I've seen that has talked about Young Sheldon, that likes Young Sheldon, it's because of the characters and they really want to see like what happens. Ooh, I hate that I said that because I can't stand Big Bang Theory. And that's a show. And that's a show where I think I would like the characters and I hate the comedy. Where like I feel like I've never laughed once at Big Bang Theory.
There's one episode that I have died laughing at Big Bang Theory, and actually now I want to go back and rewatch it. They didn't realize that they took pot cookies, and they're supposed to be doing this huge like looking at the stars thing or whatever, and they're fucking freaking out. It was the funniest fucking thing at the time that I watched it. But I agree, but it's also funny. You take something like Friends, which is probably the most successful sitcom of all time, right?
Joey.
And Joey was so panned and like nobody watched it. And Joey was likely everybody says that their favorite character is either Phoebe or Joey because they're the two wackiest, funniest things. But that also tells you the same reason why Karen and Jack don't have a spinoff, why Niles and Cece don't have a spinoff, is that those are supporting characters. If they're the main character and
they're
that's
meant to be supporting,
it ruins it. It ruins that dynamic.
It's because in order to have now we're getting to like writing theory and all this kind of stuff.
Well, to be fair, I mean, like it's not like we go into. We're talking about sitcoms. We're not talking about Lost, where we actually have to, tear apart little things. This is generally what this is supposed to be about.
But it's fascinating because like the reason why like a Jack and Karen can't have their own show is because in order for a main character to be a main character, they have to have a lot of fallacies and like. The focus can't be, I'm going to bring the zingy one-liners all the time. Niles could never have a spinoff because you would have to change Niles' character to make them the main character. And the reason why there's like some shows that have very successful spinoffs, but it's usually the spinoff feels nothing like the actual show that it's being spun off from. Right. And that's purposeful because if you want to, you can't just spin off and make the same show that you've already made because people will get tired of that. Unless it's like got really in-depth characters that are done really well that it does a great job. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
when you have characters like Niles and Cece, Jack and Karen, blah, 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 right? Their inherent role is that they want to be the main character. Like that is their whole point. Jack would love nothing more than to be the center of attention. Karen would love nothing more than to be like, I run everything, like that's her whole thing. Cece wants nothing more to be the love interest of Maxwell. Niles wants nothing more to be the most successful person in the house. Like those are the things that what ends up happening with supporting characters is that they idolize something that they can't have plot wise with what's going on with the main characters. And that's why they're supporting and they're not like the main show. And just based off of that, even though it's not something we're consciously thinking of, it's those power dynamics that make them funnier as supporting characters. When you make them the main character, like who wants to see Niles successful? No one.
Yeah. No one.
Like the whole point of him being like a butler who knows everything and is like way better of a person than Maxwell is inherently the comedy of his character.
Absolutely. And I think like that's a good segue into the second episode that we watched today, which is a fine family reunion, because in this episode, I would rate it probably like an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really well done and was super funny. I loved the structure of it. I really liked the characters in it. And I like how Cece and Niles play such a good supporting role in this. Same with Yetta. I think Yetta plays an amazing, again, Yetta steals every scene that they're in.
That's great.
I was thinking as the episode was happening, I was like, God, I want to make her MVP. I'm not gonna, but I wanna. Speaking of MVP and LVP, we should probably do that for the last episode. So
for the Dope Diamond, who's your MVP?
MVP would probably be Sylvia, just because she was funny as fuck in this episode. I really did like her, even though her character is pretty awful in terms of what she's doing to Fran as a mother. I feel like Sylvia was hilarious, always poking people, doing stuff. She's like, clearly she knows what she's doing. And this isn't even talking about the terrible fat phobic jokes that are at the expense of Sylvia's character throughout this entire episode.
And it's way worse than a fine family feud.
Oh, it's so bad.
But I will say this. When Fran does it, it's punching down. Right?
Yeah.
But the reactions of Sylvia and in the second case of Frida and all that kind of stuff, of this kind of just brush it off and like, yeah, that's who I am. And I'm going to fucking want that piece of cake and all that kind of stuff. That's what makes it genuinely funny, because like, who gives a shit? I'm fat. Give me cake. I want it. Like that kind of thing is kind of like nice, but it's the punching down from like, yeah. I mean, we've already talked about this a billion times and it's not going to get better.
Yeah, I think it's also because they play it up so campy, and I think camp is like a great way of tackling this stuff, because they're so unrealistic characters. Of like, it would be really bad if like Sylvia was a grounded character, and then like maybe has a very grounded eating disorder, and then they decide to like have this kind of joke about it, and then you're like, wow, that's really fucked up, Fran. Because they're not grounded characters, they're supporting characters. You're like, oh, whatever.
If they did this kind of stuff to Hurley and Lost, it'd be really
it'd be so bad. Oh my God.
It would be so bad. But the whole character thing here, because here's the thing too, these characters do exist. Like there were people in my dad's side of the family are all obese, morbidly obese, like that kind of thing. These characters, I grew up with these. We weren't Jewish, but there was 100%, the tummy. Who has the men in my family have a running joke where they always do like a prom line of everybody holding each other like this when there's a pregnant woman in the family, and then it's just all the fattest men who do like. That's the shit that they do, and then they're normally having a sandwich or something like that, because that's just like that's the so that kind of stuff does exist. I grew up with it. I see it here in New York. I see it with some of like when you bring in the Jewish nature of this, of like the mother nagging the daughter nagging the mother, and that kind of stuff. Like that's not only a Jewish thing, but there is something within Jewish culture that's very prevalent, especially in New York City. I've heard so many stories similar to this. So yeah, they're writing what they know. It just sucks when you do it on television week after week after week, because when you're an impressionable little kid like I was that then watched the show nonstop, I really do think that this is the kind of thing that really affected some of my own image of myself or other people around me when it came to wealth or health and wellness. Oh my God, health and wellness is what I wanted to say.
Health and wealth. No,
health and wealth. I want to be rich.
And my LVP, just for Tyler's sake, because I don't want to make sure that I don't forget it. LVP for this episode, also Sylvia. So she's my MVP and my LVP.
I like that. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, she's really funny in this episode, but also her character's pretty shitty for what she does to Fran and like makes her feel like shit. So yeah, Sylvia for both. And also my outfit of the episode was, oh my God, I'm blanking. It's not important. I can't remember, but for the second episode, my rating for it is definitely an 8 out of 10. I thought it was really funny. Thought it was really good. Love the great interactions between Maxwell and Fran when it comes to planning this party. Also, how would you turn down the Guggenheim and instead go to a nightclub in Queens? I'm good. To give me Guggenheim any day.
So here's the thing. You and I grew up in a very different socioeconomic set where like we're sitting back being like, holy shit.
That's some Chuck E. Cheese ass shit where she has that 315.
Discovery Zone. Like, let's get into it. But what they're trying to show, which is obvious, is like stuffy, blah, 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 versus like classy, wealthy, whatever, versus, fun, loose, being more in tune with what a teenager really wants.
Yeah. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And that food fight scene at the very end was, no pun intended, the icing on the cake, because they really got them dirty for that scene. I love that because this is filmed in front of a live audience. So like, she's not that dirty in one take. And then you turned over to Maxwell. Maxwell turns on the lights. And that they were like covering her and just fucking dousing her in pudding and like gross shit. And then they turn on the lights and she's just fucking covered in filth. And I love it.
And then Niles and Cece. And I didn't even get to see your reaction to that because my food got delivered at that moment. But like when they come out, she started it, sir. They're so dirty. I just like that this episode kind of just like goes there at the end.
Oh
like,
yeah.
You want peak comedy? Yeah, we'll do a food fight.
And I think this episode needed that last scene, because the middle portion of it, I thought it was really funny, but I could see where it's like, if the ending is just like them having this like discussion about the rivalry between Fran's aunt and Fran's mother, I was like, all right, I see it. I get it. That's funny. But that scene where I forgot the aunt's name.
So she's Aunt Frida.
Aunt Frida takes a piece of cake and smothers it into Sylvia's tits.
Eclair. That's my favorite thing. Who has an eclair served at a Sweet 16 party where there's like, also, who just has a vat of tapioca pudding to be putting in bowls? Like, it's just such like a weird dynamic of like, what
Queens. Food? That's so Queens.
What? So I kind of want to talk about Aunt Frida here for a second. What are your thoughts on Aunt Frida?
I love her. I thought she was so good. I am not going to lie. I wish she was cast older, but I get why. It's like a guest star that they had come and play Aunt Frida. But
Lainey Kazan.
Yeah. I can't remember where I've known. She's in a lot of stuff.
She's been in like stuff that you would probably know is like My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
She's been in those. She's also been in Will and Grace before. She is a big Broadway person. So she's somebody who had been in Funny Girl. I'm just looking at some of the stuff here too. She posed in Playboy in the 70s.
Ooh.
She was a big get, but she's like a Brooklyn Jewish woman. So like fit the aesthetic like perfectly. And I think that, they wanted somebody who is somebody who could fit in with this crazy family. Oh, we love ourselves some Broadway people. Let's bring in Lainey. I will say they bring her in. She will occasionally come in and out of the series.
I'm down for that.
What I love about it is that she will always challenge Sylvia, right? Like, it's great to have that character who isn't Fran or Yetta that just kind of comes in and creates a little bit more conflict. And then it's also fun to see how Fran, who clearly loves her aunt, has a relationship with her that's very different than like how she relates to her mother, but then also at the same time is kind of the same in how she relates to her.
So I have a question then. Is this aunt the daughter of Yetta, or is
No.
it through marriage?
It's through marriage. So she,
Okay. That makes sense then.
yeah, it's her. So it's Fran's father's sister. So that's why when she said at the end, "You took my mother's pearls," it's because like at that point Sylvia's technically the in-law, you know. So there'll be episodes where you're going to learn a little bit more about the you know, the
dynamic of all this.
It always drives me crazy with this show, and they do this a few times, and just be on the lookout for it, because it's a lot of this stuff also happens way late in the series. But it drives me crazy when they're like, "Oh, the Fine family is so crazy," and they're talking about like Aunt Frida. I'm like, yeah, I know she's part of the Fines, but like Sylvia's not. Like Sylvia is by marriage. Yetta's not a Fine. Like stop calling her a Fine. They'll be like, you know, the Fine women like Yetta. I'm like, Yetta's not a Fine. She's a Rosenberg.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah.
Fine. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's so true. I never thought of it that way. But regardless, I thought this was great. I love this rivalry. I'm here to see more of it. And I think having someone challenge Sylvia, especially after the last episode, is really entertaining. And even Maggie didn't get on my nerves in this episode, which is surprising because Maggie typically does in a lot of these episodes. Overall,
seeing Maxwell's like in the very beginning having like that grin on his face.
Oh, it was so cute. He's like, my little baby girl. Like
I love whenever Maxwell has, even though they're nowhere near as big camp moments, but whenever he gets to be a little campy, I do like those moments.
And he eats it up. He's just like, oh, I got to finally play this character in a different way.
And the way he enters and has this like, oh, like moment where he gets to be slightly physical and such.
Yes.
I love it.
And you could tell too, when he enters that party and he gets hit with food, that was not planned. I feel like the actors seemed to like be taken aback, but he acted as if he was Maxwell in that scene. And I loved it. And I was like, oh, this is fun. Overall 8 out of 10. And if I had to give an MVP and an LVP for this episode, because there's not a lot to like decompress like we did in the last episode, because like I think I had a lot of faults at the last episode, but like this one I thought was just a standard really good episode. My MVP for this episode is probably going to be Aunt Frida. I thought she was really good. I liked how she plays off of Sylvia, and I want more Aunt Frida. My LVP for this episode is probably going to go to that's a tough one. I'm not quite sure who I want to give it to. They're all really funny.
It's a really tough one.
Maybe Sylvia?
I think Sylvia, or to be honest, Fran kind of too.
I thought she was funny though. She was really good this episode.
Sylvia's funny too. One of my all-time favorite Fran and Sylvia moments happens in this episode, which is why I like. To be fair, we're now entering the part where I will be mouthing along a lot of shit when we're watching, and I apologize. Fine. But I love that. Listen, have the party wherever you want. Oh, Ma, you're just saying that. You're just trying to make me feel guilty. And she's like, I'm not trying to make you feel anything. Feel this. Is this a lump here?
It's so silly.
Like one of my all-time favorite like little things like that. It's so stupid, but it so captures their relationship perfectly.
You know what? I will give it to Fran. And here's why. I get why she wants to have this party in this venue, but it's not because of Maggie. It's because she wants a party in this venue, and the projecting of her childhood onto Maggie, I'm like, trying to convince Maggie, oh yeah, this will be cool. Just go with along with it.
Especially
Just
when
go.
Maggie wasn't even really sold too much on it. And then
Yeah.
Maggie's also like, well, I want to have the party there, but if it's going to come between your family, I'm not really interested in it. Let's just go somewhere. Like, so Maggie doesn't care that much.
Yeah, and Maggie's like trying to be compromisable here. She's like,
Yeah.
I just want a fun party. I don't give a shit kind of where it is. And then it causes Maxwell to have to cancel on the Guggenheim, which he probably had to pull a lot of strings in order to get, which is annoying.
Delta guy, sorority, pull.
Yeah. Which I loved. Overall, I think that's my feels. MVP, Aunt Frida, LVP, the Fran herself.
What about outfit of the episode? Do you have one?
Oh, that's definitely the blue dress.
If it wasn't, I was about to say
Girl.
that jacket that she wears for
The
most.
racer jacket.
Yes, why?
The shoulder pads in it.
It was so bad. The shoulder pads and also her hair being down like that looks so weird with it.
It was strange. That blue dress was hot.
Oh, that blue dress was. Yep.
All right. So what are the next 2 episodes?
Okay. So the next episode, which will be episode 5, is Val's apartment.
Oh God. I'm going to assume that this is a move-in episode.
Okay.
So Val is moving to a new place, and so Fran needs to help her move boxes and stuff in. And then maybe there is a hot neighbor that lives near Val. And so Fran starts putting on the moves, and they're going to probably do the same thing where Maxwell maybe is somehow roped in to have to help Val move in and gets jealous of this hot neighbor that Fran is flirting with.
That makes such complete sense, but it's not it.
Damn.
It is a move-in episode, but the other stuff isn't correct.
Damn.
And then episode 6, Shopaholic.
Ooh. Damn, this is tough. Maybe this is an episode where it's a Fran-centric episode. Fran and Cece-centric episode. And what happens is similar to what we got, I think, in season 1. Maybe like Fran is doing a really good job, so she gets a bonus. And she wants to go shopping. And so maybe there's some sort of situation where it's like maybe like Maxwell wants Cece to go with her or something. She has to buy like a nice dress or something. And so it's Cece and Fran going to the mall. And Cece's never been to a mall before because she only goes to like designer stores and stuff like that. And so Cece got really gets in your face mall culture in this episode. And it's I would love if it's just a Fran and Cece centric episode.
It is not. It is very Fran centric. Very Fran centric.
Okay.
Val's apartment is both of them. I really like both of these upcoming episodes. I think they're really good. There's a lot of character development in both.
Ooh, okay.
I just think that this is a really cool, let's move the needle a little bit.
Hell yeah, I'm down. This is exciting.
I think you're especially gonna like Val's apartment for one main theme that's gonna happen in it. So I can't wait to see. I mean, it's not like huge or anything like that, but I think that you'll just chuckle at it. So.
Okay, cool. Well, that was episodes 3 and 4 of season 3. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us at Hot Mess Moments on Twitter if you want updates to any of our upcoming episodes.
That's right. And also, please feel free to give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us out tremendously with the algorithm.
Yeah.
Helps other people discover our beautiful voices and our hot messery.
It's so true. And make sure to follow me at 8-Bit Dylan if you want to talk about anything lost, even though that's not what we talked about today.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to talk about the nanny, follow me at 8. Nope.
Yeah, follow her at 8-Bit Dylan too.
Gust of wind 11. Just dropped the thing too on the ground that I was fidgeting with. All right.
No,
well,
you're good. Yeah, this is a good end. That's a good end. We will see you all on Thursday with our coverage of season 3, episodes 3 and 4 of Lost. And until then, stay awesome, stay beautiful, you lovely people. Bye.